to episode 11 of the Double Down podcast presented by Waterwave. Today is Friday, December 2nd, and I'm thrilled to be back in the studio with you guys this week. Before we get to our featured interview, we are going to do the Double Down weekly wrap-up. A segment that we kind of introed a couple weeks ago, and we're going to stick with it. It's just continuing to wrap up my kind of life and, things that are going on in my life. Like I said, I'm happy to be home. We were in California, then we were in Virginia, so we've kind of been, all over the country the past week and a half, and it's just happy to be back. If you guys are living in Minnesota, there's snow on the ground, which, people have mixed feelings about, but, I'm excited. I love the snow. That means it's Christmas time, so snow is a good thing for me. I'm excited about it. Christmas is right around the corner. It's December 2nd, like I said, so it's good energy. Got to get a tree up in my room. I haven't done that yet, so that's going to be the next move. But like I said, consistent and constant travel has kind of been, a little bit of a pain, but it's exciting because we get to go to fun places. We head to Purdue on Sunday, so we're excited about that one. They are probably the best team in the country. They have probably the National Player of the Year candidate in Zach Edey, so it's going to be a good challenge for us as we go into Mackey Arena, which is arguably the toughest place to play in the Big Ten. First Big Ten game as well, so fans are going to be there and excited, so it's going to be a good test for our team. When it comes to my knee, nothing really new to report, just kind of the same old rehab and just getting it in. And like I mentioned, being on the road is tough, but one of my biggest focuses on the road is just to make sure I'm still getting my rehab in, and we're sticking up to date with all that kind of stuff. So that's all I really got this week for the Double Down Weekly Wrap-Up, but now let's get into our interview. I'm excited to be joined by former University of Minnesota women's hockey player. The Edina, Minnesota native was named 2015 Miss Hockey. She then went on to have an illustrious career with the Gophers, which resulted in a national championship, being named AHCA American Scholar, and receiving Minnesota's Big Ten Conference Outstanding Sportsmanship Award. A new friend of the podcast, Taylor Williamson.
Thanks for having me, Parker.
Yeah, excited to have you on. I've heard a lot about you, and a guest that when I actually started the podcast, I had many people tell me, you need to get Taylor on the podcast. So excited we're here and we're doing it, and excited to share your story as well. But, let's bring it back to, growing up. You mentioned being from Edina, being a cake eater. You probably heard that several times. Take me through kind of your early life in sports, because I know you won the Athena Award, so that means you had to play many sports, so you probably played many sports growing up. Take us, the listeners, through, what was your early life like playing sports?
Yeah, I mean, from the get-go, ever since I was, a little kid, I would not stop moving. So, naturally, my parents did what they thought was best and put me in as many sports as they could think of. Yeah. And I loved it, right? I had that natural competitor within me from day one, and no matter if it was soccer, softball, hockey, lacrosse, golf,
did it all.
Right, did a little bit of everything. It's you stepped on that field or that rink and you wanted to be the best. Yeah. And I loved the friendships that I made through it. I loved the lessons that I learned through it, and just even going home after a game, it's all right, I wasn't the best at this, or I want to get better at this. So it's then you go in the backyard and you work on your craft. Yeah. So that was always really fun.
No, it's super cool. And we've talked, about with other guests, just the things that you remember from growing up in sports. And it's you don't really remember the wins and losses or anything like that, but it's the memories you made. And like you said, we've had many guests talk about, we went in our backyard and we shot on our basketball hoop because that's, what we learned that day. So, just something that, I think sports are such a special thing and such a special part of my life. So it's cool to see other people kind of had that experience. At the end of the day, hockey was what was for you. When did you know hockey was going to be your future? I'm sure you always knew you wanted to be a Gopher with, your family background. Just kind of take us through, your upbringing in hockey and what made you decide I want to play college hockey for the Gophers.
I think I always knew that hockey was going to be my sport. Mm-hmm. My grandpa played hockey. My dad played hockey. Both of them were Gophers. Mm-hmm. So, I knew the Minnesota chant when I was 3, right? Because we're going to football, basketball, hockey games, and you love the maroon and gold. Yeah. So it was never I never outwardly would be I really want to be a Gopher. Mm-hmm. I kept that to myself, knowing that was a goal. My sophomore year is when I committed, and I was so excited. How can you not be? It's your hometown team. He grew up going to games, and obviously the culture that we have for Gopher women's hockey specifically is so unique.
Yeah.
Like we're a championship program, and from the girls to the staff to the coaches, it's just like a top tier program to be a part of. And when I look back at the past 4 years, I would say that it's just like being surrounded by such incredible people, and the lessons that I learned along the way are like what I am the most grateful for out of like anything.
Yeah, and it's like and I think it's like a Minnesota thing too. You know, it's like we have such good people here in this state, and you know, other people can attest. But like I even look at my team, like you know, I've had teams in the past where, you know, just it wasn't a great locker room. You know, it wasn't a great environment. But you know, my time here at the U has just been awesome because we have such good people and people that, you know, think about, for me, you know, especially it's like it's bigger than basketball. And for you, I think you can say the same thing. It's bigger than hockey. It's just the people and the connections you make inside, you know, that locker room are so important. You know, you talk about the championship atmosphere. You know, your senior year, they won a national championship, right?
We won my freshman year, and then we were runner-up my senior year.
But your senior year of high school, the Gophers won a national championship, right?
Yes.
So you were coming into a national championship program.
Right, yeah. So that was super cool, like knowing, like I'm going into a program that's, you know, already got incredible players, but like now being that, you know, that senior in high school that just won Miss Hockey, like have all, you know, you have like the hype behind you. That was like a really big like moment in my career as an athlete where I was like, okay, how can I take all this pressure I'm feeling and channel it into my sport?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first time I'd ever like felt that, because luckily just with where I was at in my career, like I was always like one of the top kids, if not the.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm going into a team with Olympians, All-Americans.
Everybody's the top kid, yeah.
Everybody's the top dog. So it's like, okay, where do I fit in this puzzle?
Yeah. How was that for you? You know, I think it's I even was intimidating. I went Division II out of high school, and my team was really good. You know, we went to a national championship my freshman year. So like, you know, I didn't play. I knew I wasn't going to play because I wasn't good enough. Like, how did you kind of, you know, where was your mindset at going into the U? Because it's like this isn't joining like your local club team. This is joining the best team in the country.
Surprisingly, I wasn't that nervous. I felt prepared.
Yeah.
And so I was more so excited for the challenge to be like, all right, now I can really see the type of player and type of athlete I am. I felt like my mental game was really on point within going into my freshman year. I was there all summer. I knew most of the girls. I'd played with them in high school. So for me, I was just excited. Like, I watched Amanda Kessel when I was in middle school.
That's crazy, yeah.
And because of her injury, she was on the team. So I was like, that's awesome. You know, you got Danny Cameronese, Hannah Brandt, Lee Steckline, Melita McMillan, like all these legends that everybody loves and, you know, looks up to. So for me to be on the same ice with them every day was like so cool.
Yeah, it's almost like an honor, like, you know, especially from, you know, a person that just loves the sport. You know, we talk about growing up and loving the sport. You know, your dad played, your grandpa played, like, not that you have this like pressure to let them down, but it's like, hey, I have to show up because first of all, I know I'm good enough, but second of all, like, you know, this is, you know, I signed up for this. This is real. This is like competitive, you know, atmosphere. What was your role kind of, you know, coming into your freshman year? I know a lot of times freshmen, you know, they maybe, you know, maybe a third line or, you know, maybe, you know, put their head down because they're third line and get disappointed. But how did you kind of like, you know, what was your role and how did you kind of just like channel your mental to like, hey, I'm only going to continue to get better and help this team out?
Yeah, so I was third line my freshman year. And the first thing that it wasn't even the coaches, it was my teammates.
Yeah.
They came up to me and said, all right, are you ready for this? I'm like, you know, in my head, I'm like, yeah, it's third line. You know, like,
hell yeah, come on.
And they're like, no, like, are you really ready? Because third line is what wins championships. And that has stuck with me. I tell my players, because I'm a coach now, like, third line wins championships. And so I like totally took on that role and embraced it the best I could. And I think that was really helpful. Yeah. Once you can clearly understand your role, like the sooner the better for players, I tell them.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Then you can run with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've even seen it in my own team this year, and it's like, you know, guys trying to figure out their role. And you look across any sport, any platform, you know, any championship team. There's some sort of role that has to be played, whether it's, a guy on a football team that's got to go out there and make a block, or, a basketball player that's got to take a charge. Like, there's some sort of role that everybody has to take place in. And it works out for you. You play your whole freshman season. You were actually tied for third on the team with 3 game-winning goals. So you're producing, and you go and you win a national championship. How did that feel your freshman year? Like, take us through kind of the Frozen Four and that feeling of elation when you get to hold that trophy up.
It was such a surreal moment, because that is when you commit to the University of Minnesota to play hockey there, you are signing up to win a national championship.
For sure. Yeah.
So it's like all that work that we had put in, like, it paid off in that moment. But I think the coolest part, when I look back at the Frozen Four in particular, in our semifinal game, we had to play Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And obviously our rival team, and at the time, their goalie, Davian, hadn't been scored on in, I think it was 10 periods.
Wow.
Like, she had a shutout. So we knew that was the game that we had to focus on in that moment. We couldn't look to the championship.
Yeah.
But as soon as we won that game, every single person in that locker room was like, we're winning. Like, all the seniors were like, we're gonna beat the undefeated Boston College Eagles, and we're gonna take Natty home. Like, we know it.
Yeah, no question. And that's something that's so unique. And I think until you feel it, it's such a crazy feeling, because I've definitely felt that kind of there's no way we lose this game. We're too good. And you talk about the Wisconsin game. You scored the first goal in that game, right?
Yeah.
Take us through that. You're a freshman. You're playing in the Frozen Four. You're playing against, who else would you rather play? Wisconsin, your rivals, and you score the first goal. Take us kind of through that emotion.
Right. So here's the funny thing is, in that game, we're probably only 3 minutes in. And I saw Lee Steckline, she had just come back from the Olympics. She collects that puck, and you can see that jump in her. My other line mates had changed.
Okay.
And I was like, no, I got to follow this up, right?
Yeah.
But it's so funny, because Amanda Kessel is who would come out for me. I was her change.
Yeah.
And so I could hear her calling my name, but I just kept going with Lee. Kind of just found that soft spot, and she went from below the goal line, and it was that quick one-timer in. And the best part was Kess came up to me, and she's like, thank God you didn't listen to me in that moment, right?
Probably the first one to congratulate you.
Right.
And that's that's even tough on its own. Being a freshman, Amanda Kessel, people know that name, Olympian. It's how do you not go change but you don't, and you go score the goal?
Right. Yeah, no, it was, it's so funny. Hockey, it's such a instinctual sport, and anything can happen.
Yeah.
So with I mean that's every sport.
Yeah.
So it's you gotta trust your instinct. You've been playing it since day one. If you have that feeling, you gotta go for it. Yes, you follow that system that your coach has, but at the end of the day, you gotta do what you believe is best within that moment.
For sure. And I think that's across all sports, where it's I tell guys on our team, it's you've been doing this for so long, you don't have to second guess. You don't have to just go out there and play. You've been doing it your whole life. It's nothing you have to be scared about. It's just at the end, it's basketball, it's hockey. You're doing what you love to do. It's a game. So yeah, you guys win a national championship. Take us kind of through that, just I've never won a national championship. I don't think a lot of people have won a national championship. Take us through that feeling, because you got one.
Well, I mean, what you remember is the feeling and the celebration with your teammates, because they're the ones that were in the trenches with you.
Yeah. Whether
it was tears, blood, right, over and over whistles of skates and 6 a.m. workouts and 2-a-day workouts, and the adversity that you face as one team is so cool to just celebrate. You throw your gloves up in the air, you throw your helmet off.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I remember the most.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if you were a freshman like me or if you were a fifth year like Amanda Kessel. We were all national champions, and we will wear that label forever.
Yeah, and it's such a special thing that you, like you said, it's you spend so much time with these people. It's not like you're around them for an hour a day. It's you live with them. You eat with them. You spend all your day with them, and to celebrate that as a team is such a special thing. Let's head into your sophomore year. You're going into your sophomore year, probably feeling pretty good, probably feeling pretty excited about the season. Kind of just take us through gearing up for your sophomore year, and then kind of just what kind of started happening to you towards the end of the year.
Yeah, so going into my sophomore year, like we just talked about, won the national championship, and then in August, I actually made the U22 National Series team to play Canada and Calgary.
Okay.
So that was a huge goal that I had. I'd played on the U18 team.
Mm-hmm.
We won a silver medal, but I was like, I want to wear the red, white, and blue again.
Yeah.
So I had achieved that goal. So I'm kind of going onto campus with a big head.
Yeah, as you should.
Like, I'm like, all right, I was consistently third line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just achieved this awesome goal, played really well for Team USA. So I'm expecting to be a role player on this team. First or second line, get on the power play or penalty kill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
I get put on the 3rd/4th line,
Wow.
and my mental game went right out the door.
Really?
I lost it. I was so confused, and naturally my instinct was to blame Frosty.
Yeah, blame the coach, which a lot of people do. Yeah.
Right. And that whole year was a struggle for me.
Mm-hmm.
So as we got to the end of the season, we lost in the semifinal Frozen Four to Clarkson, who ended up winning. But meanwhile, I started to notice that I was having my own like issues.
Yeah.
So I was having like slurred speech at the end of the day. But I wouldn't tell like anyone because I was like, I just go in my room, and then after like 5 or 10 minutes, it would go away.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I'm super anxious. Like I borderline depressed. Like I wake up and I grind and I don't get rewarded for any of the hard work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I'm like, I think it's just myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the headspace I put myself in.
Yeah.
But then like 4 to 6 weeks later, I went and I got an MRI, and they found a big arachnoid cyst like the size of my fist.
That's crazy.
So I went from going to spring training on a Monday morning, and then on a Tuesday morning I was being operated on, getting emergency brain surgery. So like that was just like a super surreal moment. Like you're supposed to be a healthy athlete.
Yeah.
We, like every single college athlete, we're supposed to be perfect. Yet we're not.
No, never are. Never
So
are.
to me, that was like a really weird thing. It's like I also believed I was supposed to be perfect. I didn't give myself the grace and kindness to be like, it's okay to not be okay.
How hard was, that? Obviously, it's hard to hear a doctor come in and tell you have a cyst the size of a fist in your brain. Like that's a battle on its own. But you talk about, everything else you're dealing with. Your mental's not great. You make a team, and you're fighting all these, not demons, but you're fighting all these like battles, right? How did you kind of get through that emotionally?
I feel like my family, my parents, they're like my rock.
Yeah.
So I was terrified, but I also didn't have the time to really process what was happening because
so fast.
I found out in 4 o'clock on Monday, and then 6 a.m. I'm getting operated on. So you don't really have that time. And once I was out, then I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I just had brain surgery.
Yeah.
Never would have guessed.
No.
And I found out a couple of years ago, there's an NHL player on Edmonton who died of the same thing that I had.
Wow.
But it was about half the size.
Jesus.
So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, my God, like, I'm so blessed and so lucky that I got through that.
That's crazy.
It was really wild, and the funny part about it all is my brain went to, when can I play? I didn't even really allow myself to feel what I was genuinely feeling, because I was like, I got to get back to hockey. Did you have
any and I know it's hard in that moment, but did you have any excitement when you kind of found out, hey, there actually is something wrong, and then there's a fix to this?
Right. I think I more so, I wasn't excited, but I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, now
some clarity almost.
Clarity of why I was feeling the way that I felt for so long, and I would just brush it off being like, it's a part of the grind.
Which is hard to do on its own, because it's that's not who you are.
Right.
From the testimonies of other people I heard about you, that's not who Taylor is, and you have to go in your room and be like, okay, there's something wrong with me, but it's not me doing this, and then you finally, you get that information, and you can, go into surgery, and you get immediate surgery, and but you take us through kind of, after that, you talked about just wanting to get back on the ice, wanting to get back playing. What did that process take physically, mentally, and how did it, end up going for you?
Yeah, so that was in April. And that's when I realized, I'm like, man, I had brain surgery, because they're like, you can't lift anything heavier than 10 pounds. I was staying at home with my family, and my little brother, he would slam a door, and it was and
come on, bro.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you're killing me. So that was more humbling in that moment. But then in like June, July, I started to train again.
Yeah.
They gave me the green light. Here's the issue. Is when you tell an athlete they can go,
They want to go.
they're going 100, man. Like I just took off.
Yeah.
And at that same time, I started to notice a symptom came back. So we went in, and I'm like, did I come back too soon? And he goes, no, your brain looks pristine. It looks better than we could have even imagined. So he literally says in these words, I'm sorry, but your brain is not the answer to your problem.
Wow.
And I look back at that, and I'm like, kind of like, that's so effed up. Like,
Yeah.
you go to the doctor to get an answer to a problem.
Yeah.
And he literally just told me that they don't know what's going on with me.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm like, okay, do I have to stop training? And his answer was, no, just back off a little bit. And as you're laughing, right? You're like, because that doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't work for people that are wired how we are wired. So I kept going. I kept training. And then by that time, it's like August, September, and we're on campus. And in addition to the slurred speech, I now had like a droopy eye. My face, like I couldn't smile, I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink. And then the weirdest one is I couldn't even lift my arms above my head.
Wow.
To like put my hair in a ponytail.
Wow.
So then you say, all right, like you're playing for the Gophers. How did that work?
Yeah.
It didn't.
No.
And my coaches kind of gave me the grace to be like, all right, she just had brain surgery. Like, we got to let her ease back into it. Well, during that time, like in my mind, I would wake up every morning and be like, God, I hope I make it through the day today.
Yeah.
Because every little daunting task, aside from hockey, was my biggest challenge. Eating food, being able to talk. Like, I love going to parties. I love talking and meeting people. And I couldn't even speak a single sentence.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was trapped inside my own body. But the worst part was we didn't know what was killing me. So that was the biggest challenge.
Oh, yeah, and I think it's such a tough thing, especially for a college age person, when it's like these are supposed to be the most fun times of your life. You're supposed to be going to Sally's with friends. You're supposed to be just having a good time, and
Right.
You're dealing with something that you just don't know what was up. When did you finally say, hey, we got to go figure something out here?
So it was our first weekend of games. We were playing Merrimack College, and I was suited up to play. Woke up that morning, I'm like, oh no, like this is gonna be a
You're
bad
crazy.
day.
You suited up to play.
Yeah, it was so dumb, and I was so stubborn.
Yeah.
I refused to believe that there was something wrong, which is so crazy to think about, because everybody in that locker room, everybody in that program knew that there was something wrong.
I feel like deep down you probably knew as well too.
I knew it, and it's like we're too prideful,
Yeah.
and we're too scared to admit we're not okay.
Yeah.
So I suit up to play. I'm playing blind. I'm so weak I can barely tie my skates. I'm holding my stick against my hip to pass a puck because I couldn't shoot a puck. So I was like, I'm just going to be passing. Make it through the first period, and in that moment, it was 10 times scarier than brain surgery because I couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't move my arms or legs. So they rushed me to the emergency room, like mid-game.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's that's scary. I think about, like, even in my knee surgery, it's like, for people that we've had on the podcast, like something goes wrong, like you land funny and you just know,
Right.
For you, it's like, you don't know what's going on, and
Right.
and it's scary. And it's like, especially when in your situation where you did something where you're like, okay, I thought that was supposed to fix it, and it didn't. So you end up going to the emergency room, and a doc comes in and they kind of want to do tests on you to see if it's what he thinks it is. Kind of take us through the process there.
So I still don't fully remember that entire night. What I do remember is I had about 10 doctors surrounding my hospital bed doing all sorts of stuff. And I kind of alluded to it before, like I felt trapped inside my body because I literally couldn't move and I couldn't communicate. My mind knew what I wanted to say, but like I couldn't articulate it.
Yeah,
So it's so funny when this doctor came in, I could talk.
that's crazy.
And I said to him, I'm like, all right, well, if you think you know what it is, like, let's run the test.
Yeah.
But the doctor, the attending, so I was a resident, the attending was like, there's no way she has it.
Really?
And I said, I don't care. I trust this guy. Like, run it anyways.
Yeah.
So sure enough, a week later, so I got released the next morning. We went back to Edina and stayed there. And then, a few days later, I went back to campus. So I was in class, in Ford Hall for all of you University of Minnesota students, and I was in my comm class, and I got a call from my doctor, so I just stepped out in the hallway, and I just remember him saying, Taylor, your test came back for myasthenia gravis, and that's exactly what you have.
Yeah. Did you know what that was right away? Were you aware of that?
I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Never had heard of it, but he had said, this makes complete sense. It covers every single symptom that you've been experiencing.
Yeah, and for our viewers or listeners, it's a chronic autoimmune neuromuscular disease that causes weakness in the skeletal muscles that worsens after a period of activity but improves with rest.
Correct.
Yeah, so you that checks all the boxes, right?
Checks all the boxes. It was the slurred speech, droopy eye, couldn't chew or swallow, couldn't move my arms or legs, and then the double vision. So it's like, I was like, wow, like that is insane that it took 6 months.
Yeah.
It literally was a 6-month time frame for them to come to that conclusion.
And to figure out something that can be fixed with medication, correct?
Right. So there's no cure.
Yeah.
You can take oral medication. Then I go to the hospital like every 4 weeks for an infusion. So I was there this morning, actually. But when the doc told me that, in that moment, I wasn't even scared. I was like, we can do this.
Yeah.
We now have the answer.
Mm-hmm. You almost have that kind of like thank God we finally figured out like what's going on, Is that something you kind of experience?
Yeah, so my faith is a major part of my life, and it was kind of in that moment where I was like, okay, God, like, you are who you say you are. You gave the doctor that answer. Like, I had prayed for you to, like, just tell him what's killing me.
Yeah.
And you did that. And now I know I can get through this with you. It's no longer about hockey. It's about living a normal life, like embracing every day I'm given, and kind of like being a light to other people, because there's more to life than hockey.
Yeah, and it's such a, and I've talked about it on the podcast because it's something that I've experienced in my own life as well. But people that haven't gone through something like this, and people that just don't get how like important life is and how little this game is, because at the end of the day, like, it's a game. Like, for me it's basketball, for you it's hockey. Like, it's something we love to do, but it doesn't control our lives. It's not the identity of who we are.
Right.
And like you said, you asked for help, and here's your help, and here's your answer. You talked about actually just feeling better the next day once you got on medication. How exciting was that for you? Just like finding something like, hey, now we know, not gonna be able to fix it, but we know how to like make it more manageable.
It was so cool. Like being trapped in my body and being such an extrovert and someone that like loves to just have fun. The fact that I like took that medication and I could like smile, I was like looking at myself in the mirror, being like, holy crap, like, I can smile.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing because you spent the last 6 months in your room just like worrying and trying to like, probably you try to like go like this and smile on your own, I bet.
Right. I mean, the self-talk was horrible. My like the way that I viewed myself, like I was so hard.
Yeah.
And it was like, come on, Taylor, like, how can you not eat food? Like, that's crazy. Just eat.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't. And so it was so fun. Like, I went to the rink, like ran there practically, and I like run into the training room. I'm like, you guys, like, look, I can smile.
That's crazy.
And the best part was every single teammate in that room looked at me and they like jumped up and like gave me the biggest hug.
So happy for
because
you.
they were in it. Like, if there's any group of people that was like really in it with me, it was my teammates.
Yeah.
Because they saw me every day.
Yeah.
And so for them to like equally be as excited as I was for something as little as a simple smile on my face, I feel like that's like a memory that I'm gonna like carry for the rest of my life.
It's such a cool thing about college athletics too. It's like the bond you build with people, and it's like people are dang near more excited for you than they are for themselves that day, which is such a cool thing. Kind of take us through your mindset in terms of like getting back on the ice, and when you finally do get back on the ice, take us through that.
So up until that point, hockey was my identity, and how I played in the game dictated how I felt. So there are really high highs and really low lows.
Yeah.
But after finding out that I had MG, that shifted. Hockey was no longer my identity.
Yeah.
It was back to when I was a little kid. It was so fun.
Yeah.
I loved jumping on the ice. I wasn't even practicing with the team. Like, I would go out before or after them to retrain my body how to play.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I never actually was like, it wasn't a goal of mine to like get back to playing hockey. I solely did it for my body to move because it was fun. I love being in the rink.
Brings you happiness.
Brings me happiness. And then over winter break, everybody goes home for like a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being at my house in Edina and I was like, Dad, let's go down to the park. So Walnut Ridge Park is where I spent all waking hours.
Little ODR?
Yep. Got to play some Pondy.
Of
so
course.
I went down there with my dad and I'm like, Dad, I think I want to try to play again.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me and he's like, all right, T, like, if that's what you want to do, I'll help you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my coach my whole way growing up.
Yeah.
So it was really fun. Like, I had to teach myself how to lift a puck again.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy. It's such a simple task for a hockey player.
Mm-hmm.
But then eventually I made it back. And I had to have a really big conversation with my coach.
Yeah.
And I just said, Frosty, like, I know I can do this. And he's like, all right, like, since you have the doctor's approval, we'll let you back on the team. But I'm going to tell you right now that you have to prove yourself twice as much as everybody else on this team.
Yeah.
And for most people, they'd be like, that's bullshit.
Scary, too,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
But for me, I'm like, done.
Yeah, let's go.
I'll prove it to you. So as time went on, I was practicing with the team again. Went from being in the back of the line or doing some drills to all drills and dominating in those drills.
Yeah.
And so it was so fun to just be back out there with my teammates again, doing the thing that, like, I've loved my whole life.
Yeah, and you end up coming back. You end up playing. You play a little bit of your junior year, correct? And then you play your whole senior year, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Take us kind of through that senior year. You know, last hurrah, you know, probably, you know, and this is the last time, you know, you're going to play hockey with some of your best friends. Take us through just like what that season kind of meant to you as a, you know, as a hockey player, but also just like, you know, as a young woman, you know, growing up.
So I think the coolest part about the entire thing was there's no other athlete that has myasthenia gravis that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
I like Googled it and there was one that was like a marathon runner. Mm-hmm. Well, for anyone that knows, a marathon runner and a hockey player and how they're built is completely different.
A little different.
So it was really fun to be given a second chance, and I hadn't even asked for it.
Yeah.
And so in my junior year, when I had made it back, that was probably even more impactful than my getting my senior year because, like, you know, I'd made it back in the lineup, climbed my way to the top, and then I actually scored the game-winning goal in the WCHA championship to get us to the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
And shout out to Knowles in the room who shot the puck, right?
Shout out Knowles.
Yeah. But yeah, so going into my senior year, I was like, you know, I'm content. Like, I'm so happy with what I've been able to do.
Yeah.
This is extra hockey.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the best leader I can be. I'm going to be the best hockey player I can be. And we're going to go out with a bang.
Mm-hmm. And not only did you just, you know, get to play more hockey, you did it, you know, at a pretty high level. Just some notable things. You scored 2 goals in a 4-3 overtime win over Duluth in the Minnesota Cup. So huge game, Duluth rival. Mm-hmm. You go to Ohio State and you have 4 points at Ohio State in a road sweep. And you get your 50th point with an assist and a 5-2 win over Princeton in the NCAA quarterfinal. You know, obviously those things are great. You know, you probably will remember those goals for you know, long time, assists for a long time. But just kind of take us through as you're kind of like going into the end of your career and just like finishing up some of the memories you have or some of like the things that you're like most happy for. But more like kind of advice for somebody that's kind of like finishing up their, you know, their career.
You know, I think my biggest advice would be, like, take it all in. Mm-hmm. Putting on that jersey. Yeah. Like, for all of us at Minnesota, like, we wear that M with pride.
Yeah.
And I got chills just thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Like, when you get to wear that M, it means something more than just yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's just embracing that. Like, I'd go and I'd sit in the stands at Ritter Arena before the game. Yeah. I'm like, this is the coolest arena for women's hockey in the country.
Yeah.
So it's embracing that. It's interacting with the fans. It's saying thank you to the support staff. Mm-hmm. It's all about those little things that will carry over when your career is done, or at least when your college career is done.
Yeah, well, no doubt. And I think, you know, I think about it too. It's like we always think about this like big picture in sports. It's like, hey, we got to get to the conference tournament, win the conference tournament. We got to get to the, you know, for us it's March Madness, try to win March Madness. But it's like, if you're able to kind of take a step back and just think about all the little things that go into you even being able to go out there on the ice and compete, it's like, I think there's so much beauty in that, and there's, you know, there's so much excitement in that. I'm sure you kind of, you know, felt that yourself. You know, as we wrap up, we like to kind of end with advice for listeners, advice for somebody, who's going through adversity. Maybe it isn't, the kind of adversity you went through with MG, but maybe it's an injury, maybe it's, a loss of a loved one, some sort of adversity that happens in their sport. For you talked about your faith and how that's very important to you. But what's kind of something that you go to, maybe you still go to it today, maybe you went to it when you were going through, medication, all that kind of stuff. But what kind of is something that helps you kind of get through that adversity in those tough days?
It's a great question. I mean, there's so much, when you are removed from your sport, you really get like that time to reflect. I think the first thing that jumped to my mind, and you can apply it to any sport. So for me, it was hockey is what you do. It's not who you are. Because we are so blessed to have the platform that we have. Like, we've put in the work to become Division I athletes, and we're given a platform. So it doesn't matter if you're the leading scorer on the team or if you're the fourth line player that gets spotted in. Every single little kid in that stand looks up to you.
Wants to be you, too.
And wants to be you.
Yeah.
So how are you going to leave, like, how are you going to impact them, right? Because your words mean a lot, but also your actions mean a completely other thing.
Yeah.
And so I think for any person going through adversity, like, I just want to encourage you to, like, really reflect and be like, what am I putting my identity into?
Yeah.
Is it the playing time? Because it shouldn't. You're way more than the minutes that you play.
Yeah.
Is it the amount of goals you score? Well, it shouldn't be that, because your worth is more than just the points that show on a stat sheet. It's at the end of the day the heart that you have behind all the layers of toughness and perfection that we're supposed to show.
Yeah.
Understanding that you are wired the way that you are for a reason. Your teammates love you. Your coaches love you. It might not feel like that every single day, but you are loved, you are seen, and you're more than enough.
Yeah. No, I think that's special. I think it's something we get caught up on so much, especially when, winning's a big part of college athletics. And it's like, yeah, that's all good and well, but if you're not able to, kind of take a step back and appreciate why you're there, how you got there, and the people that are around you that support you, it's I don't think you'll ever be able to kind of fulfill your complete happiness through the sport. So Taylor, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. A career that definitely defines what we're all about here at the Double Down Podcast when it comes to perseverance, never giving up, and continuing to believe in yourself. I appreciate you coming on, and that is episode 11 of the Double Down Podcast. I appreciate everybody listening. Make sure you go follow us on all our socials, on Instagram at double_down_pod, and get ready for a new episode next week. Thank you guys, and we're out. Peace.